Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to JESS FM and JESS TV's Primetime Live with James. We are coming to you tonight with a lot of different stories, but of course, following our news headlines, we are going to be taking an in-depth dive into looking at the Battle of Alberta. Yes, the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames have kicked off the 25-26 hockey season. The NHL is making great strides to move this season forward, but who is it in Alberta that is projected by AI to take the lead? We'll find out, and we will go into the good, the bad, and the ugly of the NHL when it comes to the Battle of Alberta. But first, we are going to take a look at the headlines that are making the rounds. We start tonight, of course, with a story of destruction and controversy at the most famous address in the world. We have stunning images from Washington, where Donald Trump has begun the demolition of the historic White House East Wing. We'll explore the history being turned into rubble in the firestorm of criticism that it has ignited. Closer to home, a dramatic shift in Canadian policy as Prime Minister Mark Carney declares an end to an era of economic reliance on the United States, unveiling a new bold plan for trade and immigration. We'll break down what that means for our economy and for you. And in southern Alberta, the votes are all in. Lethbridge has chosen its mayor and council for the next 4 years. We'll have the complete in-depth results, analyze a razor-thin mayoral race, and what a historically low voter turnout means for the city's future. Once again, we are coming to you live, so that means that you are welcome to call in and be a part of our conversation tonight. If you have projections for your Edmonton Oilers or your Calgary Flames, by all means, light up the phone lines. Let's have a discussion. You can call in. Tonight, I'm actually in Vancouver at the ProPic Studios because I am, again, working on another motion picture here. So at that time, if you want to call into the Vancouver Studios, by all means, it's 604-385-5093. The phone lines are open, and you can also use the live chat rooms. By all means, you can chat with us and give your opinions that way. But hey, phone calls are always great. Give a call, 604-583-5093. Or sorry, 385-5093. I think I said that wrong. In any event, ladies and gentlemen, it is on the screen, so you've got the number available. Let's move on with our news. We'll start first, of course, with the different stories from around the globe. And this is, in particular, we will look at, of course, the White House. We'll look at a fragile ceasefire that's holding in Gaza, but a new report from the World Food Program warns of mass starvation and aid struggles to reach those in need. Of course, in Edmonton, the standoff continues with the Smith government beginning its fall session with back-to-work legislation on the table as the province's teachers are still on strike, and it is entering the third week. Plus, we'll have the latest from a disturbing court case here in Lethbridge, and that and more right now on Primetime Live. Thanks for joining us. We'll start tonight with the White House. Yes, let's pull up an image of what it used to look like and when it was built. And then again, we'll take a look at what the current state is. And it seems that there is a lot to be upset about as history is being destroyed. Here is an image of the White House from back in the day. Of course, it is a beautiful structure that carries with it a lot of historical history and events and reasons for it to be there. And we'll get into that in just a moment. Currently, though, this is what you are seeing when you look, and thank you to Politico for this image here that we're going to pull up, and you'll see what's going on in the United States when it comes to this historic and beautiful building that is no more. Yes, Donald Trump is taking a wrecking ball to more than the economy and liberty. He is taking a wrecking ball to the very foundation and symbol of the United States of America. Now, this is the White House as it's never been seen before. Not since British troops set it ablaze in 1814 has such deliberate destruction been visited upon the Executive Mansion. The entire East Wing, a structure with over a century of history, is being demolished. The reason? Well, to make way for a new 90,000 square foot state ballroom, a project Donald Trump has championed. Now, the president claims the demolition is necessary for the first phase of modernization, telling reporters, in order to do it properly, we had to take down the existing structure, he said. He has dismissed the historical wing, has never thought of it as being much, he says, in a very small building. Now, the project's price tag has steadily climbed from an initial estimate of $200 million to $250 million last week to the president's latest figure of around $300 million. It sounds common when you're talking to contractors, and it is a sad state because the White House insists this will come at no cost to the taxpayers, funded privately by what Donald Trump calls me and some of my friends. And that's what he says. Those friends have been revealed to include a list of corporate giants, among them tech companies like Apple, Amazon, Google, and defense contractors like Lockheed Martin. This is a real big question. Is it really going to cost the taxpayers nothing? The president's justification of necessity stands in stark contrast to his own words from just this summer when he first announced the ballroom. He claimed it won't interfere with the current building. It'll be near it, but not touching it. And it pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. That was what he said this past summer. Now, that promise of not touching it has given way to a full-scale teardown, a contradiction that lies at the very heart of the growing controversy. So what exactly is being lost, you might ask? The East Wing history began in 1902, when President Theodore Roosevelt constructed a modest entrance for public visitors. It was dramatically expanded in 1942 under Franklin D. Roosevelt. A project that served a dual purpose, providing more office space while secretly concealing the construction of an underground Presidential Emergency Operations Center, or PEOC. It is a bunker built for wartime. For decades, it was the public's gateway to the people's house, the entrance for tours and social events. But its most significant modern role was institutionalized in 1977 when First Lady Rosalind Carter became the first to establish her official office there. Ever since, it's been the nerve center for the First Lady and her staff, housing the White House Social Secretary, correspondence staff, and calligraphers. It was here that First Ladies launched national initiatives, from literacy campaigns to public health movements. The demolition is not just an office building. It is the erasure of the physical space that cemented the role of the modern First Lady as a powerful force in American life. As one former White House staffer recalled, the First Lady, Betty Ford, once perfectly captured its significance. She was quoted as stating, "If the West Wing was the mind of the nation, then the East Wing is the heart of it." Very touching words that now have gone down in rubbles with the building. The destruction has done a fierce backlash. The National Trust for Historic Preservation sent a letter to the White House urging it to pause, stating that the demolition plans are legally required to go through a public review process. House Democrats have condemned the complete secrecy of this whole process. Now, as they continue to look at this, it has been just a big fiasco. And that, right down to the No Kings protests over the weekend, and then Monday morning, he starts destroying the White House. The White House has pushed back, circulating a fact sheet arguing that President Trump is simply continuing a proud presidential legacy of changing the White House grounds. It's true that the White House is not a static museum. Controversies have erupted over the past alterations. Thomas Jefferson's colonnades were criticized for their cost. Andrew Jackson's North Portico for its extravagance during an economic downturn, and Harry Truman's famous balcony was decried by architectural purists. But a closer look at the history reveals a fundamental difference. Past projects were additions like the West and the East Wings themselves, restorations like the complete gutting of the mansion under Truman, and that was to save it from collapse, or the repurposing of existing space, like when Richard Nixon covered a swimming pool to create the press briefing room. Until now, no president has ordered the wholesale demolition of an entire functional and historic wing of the White House in the complex simply to build something new in its place. This is not another chapter in the history of an ever-changing White House. It's a radical and unprecedented break from over 200 years of history. Now, as we move on from that, we understand the fallout from the Trump administration's policies is being felt far beyond the White House lawn. Here in Canada, it's prompted a fundamental rethinking of our country's economic future. As we continue on to look at that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to take a moment to thank our episode sponsor. Once again, it is Carry Movers Limited of Vancouver, British Columbia. They serve all of Western Canada when it comes to long-distance, commercial, corporate, office, and residential moving. You can also use Carry Movers for local moves in the Metro Vancouver and Fraser Valley region of British Columbia. They can be reached directly online at www.carrymovers.com. That's K-A-R-Y movers.com for all of your moving needs. Now, let's move on. In a rare primetime address to the nation, Prime Minister Mark Carney declared that the decades-long era of an ever closer economic relationship with the United States is now over. Citing American tariffs have created a chill in investment and turned Canada's greatest strength, its proximity to the U.S. market, into a vulnerability. The Prime Minister unveiled a bold new course, a goal to double Canada's non-U.S. exports within the next decade. He was quoted as saying, "We have to take care of ourselves because we can't rely on one foreign partner." That was during his campaign and shortly after he was elected. Now, the new direction will be detailed in the federal budget set to be released on November the 4th, and it will also include new immigration talent strategy that explicitly is designed to attract skilled technology professionals who may be reconsidering a move to the United States, and this is following the Trump administration's imposition of a steep $100,000 fee on the new H-1B visas. While pursuing this economic diversification, Prime Minister also stressed Canada's role as an energy superpower, promising pragmatic climate competitiveness strategy that focus on investment over prohibition. This message is clear. In a world of American protectionism, Canada is charting its own path. Now, let's move on to locally. Here in Alberta, a major confrontation is brewing at the legislature, which began its fall session. Now, with the province-wide teachers' strike now entering its third week, thousands of educators descended on the Capitol to make their voices heard. Their protest comes as Premier Danielle Smith's government signals its patience is wearing thin. The Premier has confirmed that back-to-work legislation could be tabled as early as this coming Monday, a move that would force an end to the job action. The government says its focus for the fall session is creating a stronger classroom, but talks with the Alberta Teachers Association remain at a standstill. The union recently rejected an offer of enhanced mediation from the province. Key sticking points in the dispute remain classroom sizes and the provincial funding formula. As the strike drags on, the impact is being felt by students across Alberta. In response, the government has announced that November's high school diploma exams will now be optional. And now to our top local story. The ballots are counted, ladies and gentlemen, and Lethbridge has made its choice. But the results of Monday's civic election revealed a city deeply divided in the electorate. Now, the incumbent, Blaine Hagen, has won his second term as mayor, but it was a much closer race than any person anticipated. Let's take a look at the unofficial numbers. When it comes to the mayoral race, Blaine Hagen has won with 7,340 votes with a 42.97% win. Ryan Meny followed up in second place with 6,435 votes and a 37.7% rate. Quentin Carlson came in third, and that was 1,810 votes at a 10.60%. And Michael Petrakis came in at 679 votes, which brought him at a 3.98%. Now, as you can see, Huygen defeated his main challenger, Ryan Meny, by just 905 votes. The count was briefly complicated by a minor clerical error where a batch of votes was entered twice into the database. A correction reduced Huygen's initial reported lead but did not change the final outcome. The tight margin reflects a campaign dominated by concerns over affordability. Many focused his message on reining in spending and criticized 4 consecutive years of tax increases. While Mayor Huygen sees his victory as an endorsement of his first term, he has also acknowledged the clear message from voters stating the need to keep taxes down. His stated priorities for the next 4 years include public safety, doctor recruitment, and affordable housing, not to mention continuing to advocate for a third bridge over the Oldman River. However, election results suggest that we will have very little, or he will anyway, very little political capital for major new spending projects. And if they're not already funded or going to be funded by other levels of government, he could hit some roadblocks. No pun intended. Now, Mayor Huygen will be working with a council that features a mix of familiar faces and new voices. Here are the 8 councillors who are going to take their seats at City Hall. We have Councillor-elect Belinda Carlson. She received 8,508 votes. Jen Schmidt-Rempel at 7,854 votes. Rajko Dodik is in with 6,841 votes, followed by Ryan Wolf with 6,395 votes. Albera at 6,347 votes. Congratulations to a friend of the show, Rufa Doria. Yes, she came in at 6,272 votes. Congratulations, Rufa. Also, Mark Campbell came in at 6,203 and Ryan Parker at 6,001. So the 5 of the 6 incumbents who sought re-election were successful, with Linda Carlson again topping the polls. They will be joined by 3 newcomers, Ryan Wolf, Rufa Doria, and Al Bieber, a former newspaper editor who campaigned on a promise of greater transparency. Voters also selected trustees for the city's 2 school boards. For the Lethbridge School Division, Cheryl Maiden was the top vote getter among the 7 selected. Also, for the Holy Spirit Catholic School Division, Carmen Momborquet. I hope I pronounced that right, but I probably butchered it, and my apologies. But she led the polls for the 5 trustees that took positions there. Now, the question is it apathy or is it obstacles that led to such a low turnout? Perhaps the biggest story of the election of all is not who won, but who didn't vote. Turnout was staggeringly low, a fact that challenges any claim of a clear mandate from the community. Just 17,107 people cast a ballot out of 88,647 eligible voters. That's a voter turnout of only 19.3%. That is, to put it in perspective, a massive drop from the 35% turnout in the 2021 municipal election. Now, some analysts suggest the low numbers may be partially due to a new provincial voting procedure rules that dampened participation rather than simple voter apathy. But whatever the cause, the result is a government that's chosen by a fraction of the population. With only 7,340 votes, Mayor Huygen was re-elected with the support of only 8.3% of all eligible voters in the city. The vast majority, more than 71,000 people, had no say in the outcome. The election results will become official at noon this Friday, October the 24th, with the new mayor and council scheduled to be sworn in Monday, October the 27th. Now, let's just take a look at a couple of briefs here. Stories that are making it around southern Alberta. In Lethbridge, a court appearance for a 12-year-old boy charged with attempted murder of his 7-year-old brother has been put over. The youth remains in custody for at least another week. Meanwhile, there's a new millionaire in the region. A man from Tabor is celebrating a $1 million win on a scratch lottery ticket. And in Medicine Hat, embattled Mayor Lindsay Clark has been reelected after a divisive first term. It was one of several communities across southern Alberta, including Coaldale and Colehurst, that elected new councils on Monday night. From the demolition of a piece of American history to a fundamental shift in Canadian economic policy and a new look City Hall right here in Lethbridge. That is our Primetime Live news updates for this Thursday, October the 23rd. I am James Cousineau. Stick around as we now go into our deep dive looking at what's ahead for the Battle of Alberta as the NHL season has kicked off. And as we know, of course, there is that historic rivalry. We are going to take a look at a rivalry at a crossroads. Yes, the in-depth analysis of the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames for the 2025-2026 season is about now. Now, let's take a look at the state of the Battle of Alberta. The Battle of Alberta is a rivalry that forged in the crucibles of the 1980s playoff wars and fueled by provincial pride, and it is entering the 2025-2026 National Hockey League season at a distinct inflection point. The historic clash, which once saw the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames trade Stanley Cups and define an era of hockey, is now a study in divergent paths and desperate pressures. Now, on one side stands the Edmonton Oilers, a team burdened by the immense weight of expectation. Armed with two of the world's most dominant hockey players in their prime, the Oilers are locked in as a Stanley Cup or bust team. Now, the reality underscored by a ticking contractual clock and a fresh sting of consecutive losses in the Stanley Cup Finals. 3 hours south, though, the Calgary Flames are navigating a much different reality. In the midst of a foundational identity shift, the organization is betting its future on a burgeoning young core and a newly appointed franchise goaltender. There's a journey of patience fraught with the inevitable growth and growing pains that accompany it of a retooling team trying to forge a new path to relevance. Don't forget, folks, if you are a fan of the Oilers or the Flames, you are more than welcome to call in at 604-385-5093. Be a part of the conversation. Now, the performance gap between the two clubs was starkly illuminated by the conclusion of the 24-25 campaign. While the Oilers were battling for hockey's ultimate prize, the Flames were left on the outside looking in, missing the postseason by the tiniest of margins, a tiebreaker. The chasm in their current competitive status sets the stage for a season when the rivalry's meaning has fundamentally changed. For Edmonton, games against Calgary are critical points to be banked in their quest for home ice advantage. For Calgary, these matchups are a measuring stick, a chance for to bloody the nose of a heavyweight and gauge the progress of their youth movement against the league's elite. The statistical baseline from last season provides a clear, data-driven snapshot of this disparity, and let's take a look at that. Now, we'll go with the metric, and then we'll go Oilers, Flames. So that's the order that we'll call this in. Now, the record, win losses and overtime losses. We are looking at the Edmonton Oilers at 48, 29, and 5 last season, while the Calgary Flames were at 41, 27, and 14. Total points for the Oilers were 101. Meanwhile, Calgary Flames came in at 96. The division finish, of course, we know that the Oilers came in third in the Pacific Division, while the Calgary Flames were in fourth. Now, goals for rank, 259th, which put them at 11th when we look at the Oilers. And meanwhile, over at the Flames, the goals there for were 220 at 29th in the league. Goals against rank put them, in terms of the Oilers, at 235, again 14th in the league, and the Flames at 236 put them at 15th in the league. Power play percentage last season for the Oilers was 23.7%, which was 12th in the NHL. Meanwhile, the Calgary Flames came in at 21% and had them at 18th position. The penalty kill percentage, the ranks there for the Oilers were 78.2%, which put them at 16th place. Meanwhile, in Calgary, they had a 76.1% at 24th position. So you can see where the changes and disparities lie, or the where they are going to be looking at improving on last year, but also where they can fine-tune because it was so close in many of those categories. Now, as the table demonstrates, the fundamental difference lay in offensive production. The Oilers, even in a year where their attack was considered less than nuclear, ranked in the top half of the league, while the Flames languished near the bottom, a fatal flaw that ultimately cost them a playoff spot. The report that we are looking at here will provide an exhaustive analysis of both franchises, dissecting their pivotal off-seasons, evaluating their strengths, their weaknesses, and projecting their trajectories for the 2025-2026 season and beyond. Now, of course, we'll start with the Edmonton Oilers and the weight of expectation. The post-mortem, or the agony of a second chance, you could call it, was 2024-2025, and that season for the Edmonton Oilers was a testament to both their elite potential and their persistent vulnerabilities. The team finished with a strong 48-29-5 record for 101 points, securing third place in a competitive Pacific Division. Their path through the Western Conference playoffs was a showcase of their top-end talent as they dispatched the Los Angeles Kings 4-2, the Vegas Knights 4-1, and the Dallas Stars 4-1, en route to their second consecutive Stanley Cup final appearance. Yet the season concluded in a most painful way imaginable, another loss in the final. This time, a 4-2 series defeat at the hands of the Florida Panthers, leaving the organization and its fan base with a profound sense of déjà vu and unfulfilled promises. A deeper look at the statistical profile reveals a team that, while formidable, had underlying issues. Their offense, the team's traditional calling card, ranked a respectable 11th in goals, but their power play was 12th in the league at 23.7%. These are strong numbers, but they represent a humanization of an attack that had been historically dominant. The team's defensive metrics were squarely in the middle of the pack, ranking 14th in goals against and 16th on the penalty kill. This profile of a very good but truly not a dominant team really created a thin margin for error that was ultimately exposed on the biggest stage at the Stanley Cup playoffs. The slight offensive regression was not due to its superstars. Leon Draisaitl was spectacular, leading the league with 52 goals, while Connor McDavid paced all playmakers with 74 assists. The issue stemmed from the supporting cast. Key secondary scorers who had previously reached incredible heights saw their production fall back to earth. Zach Hyman, who exploded for 54 goals in the 23-24 season, managed only 44 points. Now, that also we can turn to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, experienced an even more dramatic drop, falling from a career best of 104 points in 2022-2023 to just 49 last season. The decline in secondary scoring meant the team was more reliant than ever on sheer brilliance of its two top players. A formula that proved successful through three playoff rounds, but was not enough to overcome the depth and defensive structure of the eventual champions. Now, let's take a look at the offseason overhaul, a cap-forced gamble on youth. As we look here, they were faced with a looming salary cap crunch and the need to inject new energy into the roster. The Oilers underwent a significant and strategic overhaul during the 2025 offseason. The front office made a calculated decision to move on from a host of veteran wingers, shedding salary and opening roster spots for a younger, faster, and cheaper supporting cast. This exodus of established talent represented a gamble, replacing known commodities with potential and upside. The list of departures was extensive. Evander Kane was traded to the Vancouver Canucks, Victor Arvidsson was dealt to the Boston Bruins, and Jeff Skinner was moved to the San Jose Sharks. Veteran forwards Corey Perry at the Los Angeles Kings now, and Connor Brown to New Jersey Devils. They left via free agency, while a stalwart center, Derek Ryan, retired. This mass departure fundamentally altered the composition of the team's forward group, stripping away layers of experience and secondary scoring. In their place, though, let's take a look. The Oilers brought in a mix of basically reclamation projects and high-ceiling prospects. The most notable addition was former Calgary Flame Andrew Mangapane. He signed as a free agent from the Washington Capitals with the hope he could rediscover the 35-goal form he showed in 2021 and 2022. Now, veteran centers Curtis Lazar and Jack Roslovic were signed to affordable deals to bolster the bottom six. The most critical element of the overhaul, however, was the commitment to youth. Forwards Isaiah Coward and the 2025 Hobey Baker Award winner acquired from Tampa Bay, as well as Matthew Savoy, who was acquired from Buffalo in 2024, were, as we say, earmarked for significant roles, tasked with providing an immediate injection of skill and energy on entry-level contracts. Now, let's just recap the key arrivals and key departures. Let's start with key arrivals. Andrew Mangapane, he's a left wing from free agency. Isaiah Coward, left wing, trade from Tampa Bay Lightning. Jack Roslovic, my apologies, center, and he came in on free agency. Curtis Lazar came in at free agency as a center. Riley Stillman, defense, free agent. Connor Ingram, a goalie, trade from Utah. And then, of course, we also have Vasily Podkolzin, and he's a right wing, traded from Vancouver. Now, let's take a recap of who was departing. Evander Kane, of course, the left wing, is now in Vancouver. Victor Arvidsson, as we said, traded to Boston. And, of course, we know he is a forward. Jeff Skinner, forward, traded to the San Jose Sharks, while Corey Perry was a free agent and now is in LA. Connor Brown, a forward, also free agent to the New Jersey Devils, while John Klingberg is a defenseman and he left in free agency to San Jose. Derek Ryan, as we said, he is a center and he has retired. Now, amidst the roster turns, the most significant offseason development was not transactional. It was contract extension that redefined the franchise's timeline. Connor McDavid, eligible for a record-shattering long-term deal, instead signed a unique two-year deal extension worth $25 million, keeping his average annual salary, or AAV, at $12.5 million. This decision was a profound statement of intent with a league where superstars typically maximize their earnings. David prioritized winning. Very simple. McDavid wants to win in his town, and that is where he is going, hopefully. But again, we'll see how the season plays out. By keeping his cap hit flat, though, he consciously created a championship deadline. This move provides the Oilers with a maximum 2 financial flexibilities for the next 3 seasons. Of course, the financial flexibility is one that is short-term because the current one and the 2 on his new deal, that will give you a 3-year timeline, this year included. Now, the window aligns perfectly with the seasons, this current one and the 2 on his deal. Of course, it's cheap, it's entry-level contracts of key prospects like Savoy and Howard, and it precedes the massive raises to Leon Draisaitl and Evan Bouchard. Now, this contract is an ultimatum. It puts the organization on the clock to build a championship around him. within its 3-year window, or risks exploring free agency in 2028. The pressure on the entire organization from the front office to the players has been amplified tenfold. Now, let's turn our head and take a look at the anatomy of a contender. The Oilers entered the 2025-26 season with a revamped roster and a clear, singular goal. The early weeks of the campaign have provided a glimpse into both the team's enduring strengths and its newly formed weaknesses, reflected in a middling 3-3-1 start. Now, let's take a look at some strengths. The elite firepower. The team's greatest strength remains the unparalleled defensive force of its two superstars. Even with a slow start, McDavid has already posted 8 points, 1 goal and 7 assists, while Draisaitl has 6 points with 4 goals and 2 assists through 7 games. They possess this rare ability to take over a game at any moment and remain the primary reason Edmonton is considered a top-tier contender. As we move on here, let's take a look at the offensive defense. Yes, the modern NHL depends on offensive contributions from the blue line, and Edmonton, their core has been built for it. Evan Bouchard, despite a slow start to the season, with just 1 point in 7 games, is coming off a 67-point campaign and quarterbacks the top power play. Now, the acquisition of Jake Wallman, who signed a 7-year extension, adds another dynamic puck mover to a group that's already including the steady veteran Matthias Ekholm, as well as the workhorse Darnell Nurse. And we can add in there, I guess, the reliable Brett Kulak. This depth and mobility allows the Oilers to activate their defensemen in the rush, creating a 5-man attack that is difficult to contain. Now, in terms of the coaching and tactical flexibility, of course, head coach is Chris Novlat, and he is proven to be a savvy tactician. He has the luxury of deploying McDavid and Draisaitl on separate lines, creating 2 dominant offensive threats and forcing opposing coaches into impossible matchup decisions. When trailing or in need of a spark, he's not hesitant to go nuclear by unifying them on the same line, a strategy that is nearly unstoppable. The flexibility is a significant weapon, particularly in the playoffs. Meanwhile, let's take a look at some of this, what we see as the weaknesses. The most significant question that's hanging over the Oilers' championship hopes remains between the pipes. Stuart Skinner, now the undisputed number 1, is capable, and he is a goaltender who recently secured his 100th career win and has posted a solid 2.17 GAA to start the season. However, his career has been defined by streaks of brilliance followed by periods of inconsistency. Last season, the team's overall save percentage was a mediocre 16th in the league at a .894, a number that is simply not championship caliber. For the Oilers to finally get over the hump, Skinner must provide not just good, but consistently great goaltending, especially in the high-pressure playoff moments, an area where he has struggled in the past. When you look at the depth scoring void, the offseason exodus of veteran forwards has created a palpable void in secondary scoring. And this has been the primary driver of the team's slow start. It is 7 games, and the Oilers rank a shocking 26th in the NHL in goals per game with a 2.53. The team is now heavily reliant on players in new or expanded roles. Andrew Magvine, is being counted on for major bounce-back season, while there are rookies like Isaiah Howard with 1 goal and Matthias Savoy 1 assist are being asked to contribute immediately. And I can't say how important this is in a top 9 role. Now, until this new supporting cast finds its footing and provides consistent offense, the burden on McDavid and Draisaitl will be immense. Now, we take a look at the pressure cooker. In that way, we see the psychological weight of this team that cannot be overstated. The deadline set by McDavid's contract creates an environment of intense, unrelenting pressure. Every slump is magnified and every loss is scrutinized. Managing this pressure throughout the marathon of an 82-game season will be one of the team's biggest challenges. Now, let's take a look at some outlooks and projections. The expectations in Edmonton are unequivocal. Stanley Cup or failure. The roster has been constructed, the superstars are in their prime, and the championship window is as open as it will ever be. Anything less than hoisting the trophy will be viewed as a major, massive disappointment in Edmonton. Now, their projected finish, of course, despite their sluggish 3-3-1 start, the sheer talent at the top of the roster makes them a virtual lock for the top two finish in the Pacific Division. Now, the consensus among league analysts is that the division title will be a two-horse race between the Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights. They remain one of the top three betting favorites to win the Stanley Cup. In a final verdict on the Edmonton Oilers 2025-2026 season is a high-stakes race between their generational talent and their persistent flaws. Their ultimate fate will be determined by, of course, key variables, and we'll look at three. First, whether Stuart Skinner can elevate his game from capable starter to consistently being an elite goaltender. Second, whether the new look supporting cast of the three, including Mangiapane, Howard, and Savoy, can coalesce into a reliable source of secondary scoring. And third, the continued health and outworldly performances of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. If all three conditions are met, this could finally be the year the Cup returns to Edmonton. If any one of those falters, well, it could lead to another year of agonizing heartbreak for Oilers fans. Now let's shift down south to the Calgary Flames as they are forging a new identity. Yes, the agony of the tiebreaker. Now, the 2024-2025 season was a study in frustration for the Calgary Flames. On the surface, their 41-27-14 record for 96 points appears to be that of a solid competitive team. However, in the hyper-competitive Western Conference, it was still not enough. The Flames missed the final wildcard spot on a tiebreaker with the St. Louis Blues, an agonizing end to a season defined by a singular crippling flaw, an inability to score goals. Now, the team's offensive statistics were damning. They finished 29th out of 32 teams in goals for, averaging a paltry 2.68 goals per game. Their struggles were particularly pronounced at a 5-on-5, where they posted the second lowest team shooting percentage in the entire league. Now, this offensive anemia wasted a respectable defensive season in which they finished 15th in goals against and squandered the emergence of a potential superstar in their crease. The undisputed bright spot of the campaign was rookie goaltender Dustin Wolf. Thrown into the starter's role, the 24-year-old was nothing short of brilliant. He started 53 games, posting a 2.64 goals against average and a .910 save percentage, earning a nomination for the Calder Trophy as the league's top rookie. Wolf was, by a significant margin, the team's most valuable player. He single-handedly kept an offensively challenged team in the playoff hunt until the final day of the season, providing a clear sign that the franchise has found its cornerstone for the future. Now, let's take a look at their offseason stability as they were betting on a goalie. Now, in stark contrast to their provincial rivals, the Flames' 2025 offseason was characterized by stability and internal investment. Rather than seeking external solutions for their scoring woes, General Manager Craig Conroy doubled down on the team's emerging youth core, making a clear statement about the organization's long-term direction. The franchise's most significant move was locking up its most important asset, and that being Dustin Wolf, and he was signed to a massive 7-year, $52.5 million contract extension, a deal that not only solidifies his position as the face of the franchise, but also sets the financial and strategic foundation for years to come. This landmark deal was followed by a series of other important extensions that secured key parts of their youth movement. Breakout forward Matthew Cousineau signed a 7-year extension, while energetic Connor Zary inked a 3-year deal, and steady defenseman Kevin Ball was locked up for 6 years. Now, notably absent were any major trades or free agent signings aimed at acquiring offensive firepower. The team allowed veterans like Anthony Mantha and Tyson Barrie to depart without bringing in any established goal scorers to replace them. This quiet offseason was a strategic choice, signaling a commitment to a patient, defense-first identity and reliance on internal development to solve their offensive shortcomings. Now, as we look at the Calgary Flames' key offseason transactions, as I said, they were fairly quiet in the offseason. The extensions, again, for an overview, are Dustin Wolf, goalie, 7 years at $52.5 million. Cousineau at 7 years as a right wing. Kevin Ball, defense, at 6 years. Connor Zary at 3 years as a center. Marty Pospisil, my apologies. It's been one of those days. But he's a center and has a 3-year contract now. Michael Buckland got a 2-year extension as he plays center. Now, the key departures, as we said, were Anthony Mantha, right wing, and he left for free agency. Tyson Barrie, a defense player who retired. And then you had Dan Blatter, a goalie who is now a free agent, or left on free agency, I should say. Kevin Rooney, center, left at free agency, as did Jared Tenorti. So that is where we look there. The strategy building, of course, from the net out is both a philosophical choice and a practical necessity. Lacking elite offensive prospects in the immediate pipeline and possessing limited cap flexibility, the Flames are constructing a team designed to win low-scoring 2-1 games. They're doubling down on their strength, which is goal prevention, because they lack the assets to adequately address their primary weakness. Now, this places almost unprecedented amount of pressure on Dustin Wolf. For this strategy to succeed, he cannot simply be good. He must be consistently spectacular, a top 5 goaltender capable of stealing games. The fragility of this approach has been brutally exposed in the opening weeks of 2025-2026 as the team's horrific 1-6-0 start, which has seen them plummet to 32nd in the league in scoring with a 1.55 goals for. Now they're 30th in goals against when it comes to 3.81 goals against average. Now, that demonstrates what happens when a goaltending asset is merely mortal and the offense remains inert. Big concerns there. Now, let's take a look at the growing pains and the glimmers of hope as we look at this analysis. The Flame season has begun, as many analysts predicted, with struggle. The 1-6-0 record is alarming, and the underlying statistics are even more so. However, within this difficult start, there are elements that align with the team's long-term plan. Let's take a look at some of the strengths here, and that is, of course, starting with the franchise goaltender. Despite the team's poor record, Dustin Wolf remains the cornerstone and a primary reason for any optimism in Calgary. He has the talent to be a perennial Vezina Trophy finalist. And he also gives the team a chance to be competitive on nights when they are otherwise outmatched. His early season numbers, 1-5-0 with a 3.91 goals against average and an .867 save percentage, are reflective of the team's catastrophic defensive breakdown in front of him. It's not an indictment of his ability. Now, when it comes to developing their youth, of course, we can look at that as well, as the future of the Flames rests on the shoulders of its young core. Matthew Coronado has started the season strong with 3 points, coming up with 2 goals and 1 assist in 7 games, looking to build on his 47-point campaign from last year. Forwards Connor Zary and Morgan Frost are being given significant minutes to grow them into impact players. Perhaps most importantly, highly touted defensive prospect Zane Perek, the 9th overall pick in 2024, has made his NHL debut, representing a critical piece of the future blue line. The development of this group is the primary goal of this season. Let's take a look at their defensive identity. When playing effectively, the Flames can be a frustrating team to play against, led by top pairing defenseman Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Andersson. The team has a core identity built on defense structure and hard work. Of course, the challenge is maintaining that structure consistently with a young roster. Now let's switch over to looking at some of the weaknesses, and that we can start with the anemic offense. This is a team, and its critical season-defining flaw. That is that the Flames lack a true game-breaking offensive talent. Through 7 games, they have scored just 11 goals, the worst mark in the league. Their power play is clicking at a dismal 14.8%, which is 27th in the NHL, and they generate few high-danger scoring chances. Nazem Kadri, last year's leading goal scorer, had yet to find the back of the net, and the team's leading scorer is the aforementioned Kadri, with just 4 assists. Now, is it also going to be a problem with over-reliance on the youth? While the young players are long-term strength, the team is asking them to carry an enormous offensive burden in the present. Expecting players like Coronado, Zary, and Frost to drive the offense while still learning the nuances of the NHL is a difficult proposition and can lead to prolonged slumps and confidence issues. Of course, we can also look at the Huberdeau contract. Jonathan's 8-year contract is worth $10.5 million. AAV continues to be an organizational anchor. He produces a respectable 62 points as of last season, a significant bounce back from the disastrous first year in Calgary. However, that production is still not in line with his salary, which is among the highest in the league. The team needs him to be a primary offensive driver, not just a contributor. An injury caused him to miss the first 5 games of the season, and he's just 1 goal in 2 games since returning, making it difficult to gauge if he can build upon last year's progress, but it is going to be a very important piece of the Calgary Flames in this season. Now, let's take a look at some outlooks and projections here, folks. There is, of course, the fact that this is a developmental year for the Calgary Flames. Success should not be measured by wins and losses, but by the tangible growth of the young core. The primary objectives are to see Dustin Wolf solidify his status as an elite NHL goaltender, and for players like Coronado, Zary, and Perek to take significant steps forward in their development. In terms of their projected finish, well, the consensus among analysts in the fact that the Calgary Flames are destined for a bottom 3 finish in the Pacific Division. A prediction strongly supported by their dreadful 1-6-0 start. Many view the 96-point season last year as an overachievement fueled by spectacular goaltending, and a regression was widely expected. In the final verdict, the Flames are in for a long and challenging season. Their path back to contention is clear but arduous. They must build a defensive fortress around Dustin Wolf and patiently cultivate their young forwards, hoping that a few can blossom into legitimate top 6 offensive threats. The 2025-2026 season will be an exercise in evaluation aimed at determining which pieces of the young core are foundational assets for the future. It appears that head-to-head, the battle lines are drawn, ladies and gentlemen. The potential breakdown and the Payne, however the hell you say his last name, I always screw it up, but my apologies to him. But hey, whatever. It is maybe something that'll put some energy in him. Get angry at how I pronounce your name and take it out on the ice. It's all good. A direct position-by-position comparison between the 2025-2026 Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames reveals a significant and, in some areas, overwhelming talent disparity. The gap is most evident in the offensive firepower that defines the modern NHL. Excuse me, folks. A bit of a tickle there. Excuse me while I take a sip here. And it is just coffee, folks. Nothing exciting. Now, let's take a look at forwards. The overwhelming advantage, that would go to Edmonton. This is the most lopsided aspect of the rivalry. The Oilers boast two Hart Trophy winners in Connor McDavid and Draisaitl, arguably the best offensive duo in the world. The Flames' top centers, Nazem Kadri and Michael Backlund, are solid veterans, but they cannot compare to the game-breaking ability of their northern counterparts. This chasm in top-end talent gives the Oilers an advantage that is nearly impossible for the Calgary Flames to overcome on a consistent basis. Again, defense, well, this slight advantage here goes to Edmonton as well. While the Flames possess a legitimate top pairing defenseman in Mackenzie Weegar and a solid partner in Rasmus Andersson, the Oilers group is deeper, more mobile, and more defensive in terms of their dynamics. The combination of Ekholm and Bouchard's offensive creativity, Darnell Nurse's physicality, and Jake Walman's two-way game give Edmonton a more versatile and balanced blue line. When you look at the goaltending, of course, the decisive advantage, they're looking at Calgary. This is one area where the Flames hold a clear and significant edge. Dustin Wolf is a rising star and projects to be a top-tier goaltender in the NHL in the next decade. Stuart Skinner, while capable as an NHL starter, lacks the same high-end potential and has shown a propensity for inconsistency in the crucial moments. Wolf's ability to steal games gives Calgary its best and perhaps only chance to compete in the season series. As special teams, we can look at the advantage of Edmonton. Yes, we will award that area in terms of outlook to Edmonton despite their slow start. The personnel on the Oilers' top power play unit, McDavid and Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, and Bouchard, is vastly superior to what the Flames can deploy. Edmonton's power play has proven track record of dominance and is expected to return to form, while Calgary's unit has struggled to generate chances and lacks any true quarterback. Adding a new layer of intrigue this year, of course, the rivalry of the Mangiapane factor. This offensive signing of Andrew by the Oilers brings a former Flame known for his tenacious, agitating style to the other side of the battle. Andrew spent the first 4 seasons of his career in Edmonton, and his return to the Scotiabank Saddledome in an Oilers jersey will undoubtedly be a major storyline. His role in Edmonton as a potential top 6 winger and pest designed to get under the skin of his former teammates adds personal and compelling subplot to every matchup. Now, as we look here, again, we can just kind of take a look at the projected lineups for the Flames versus the Oilers, or Oilers versus Flames. So the left wing, number 1, would be Podkolzin, while Calgary Flames would have Haberdu. And then at center, you would have the top line with Connor McDavid facing Nazem Kadri on the Flames. Right wing number 1 line, Draisaitl, facing Joel Farabee. And then when you look at the left wing at number 2 position would be Andrew Mangiapane and Blake Coleman. And then, of course, at the center line on the second lineup would be Ryan Nugent-Hopkins facing off against Michael Backlund. That is where it's looking. And then as we continue on, of course, right wing on the second line would be Jack Roslovic. and Matthew Coronado for the Flames. Left wing would be Matthew Savoy for Edmonton and Samuel Honzik for Calgary. Then you would have the facing in center of Noah Philippe and Morgan Frost on the center line third. Right wing would be Trent Frederick, and facing up Calgary's Connor Zary. On the fourth line, you're looking at Isaac Howard versus Ryan Lomberg, Adam Henrique versus Justin Kirkland, David Tomasek versus Adam Klapka, and of course Matthias Ekholm facing up against Mackenzie Weegar. And then you also have so many others in terms of the positions and the changes. So I'm going to leave that as it is. We won't bother going against that, but of course we'll take a look quickly at the goalies. Stuart Skinner facing off against Dustin Wolf traditionally, or what we project. Meanwhile, the second goalie or backup will be Calvin Pickard facing Ivan Prestonev. As we continue on, projected lineups compiled from the final verdict and the rivalry outlook. Now, the 2025 season edition of the Battle of Alberta is not a clash of equals. It's a collision of two franchises at opposite ends of the competitive structure. The on-ice narrative is no longer about which team is the best in Alberta, but rather whether the burgeoning Flames can even compete with the powerhouse Oilers. For Edmonton, these games are 4-point swings against a divisional opponent that they must dominate to secure their position atop the Pacific Division. They're a necessary step to a journey with a much bigger destination in mind. For Calgary, these games are a benchmark. They offer a chance to play the role of a spoiler, to test their young players in high-intensity environments, and to see how well their defensive system holds up against the most potent offense in hockey. The prediction for the season series is clear. Edmonton will dominate. Their overwhelming talent advantage, particularly their forward position, is too significant to ignore. The Flames, their only path to victory runs through their goaltender, that they will need to be heroic. A 40-save performance from Dustin Wolf to have a chance. While Calgary may manage to steal a game on the back of such performance by the goalie, the Oilers are poised to win the season series handily. The rivalry's passion will undoubtedly persist, though, fueled by decades of history and geographic proximity. But for the foreseeable future, the on-ice results are destined to be heavily skewed in Edmonton's favor. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Primetime Live here on JESS FM and JESS TV. Don't forget that you can always drop us a message in the comment box. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to JESS TV and JESS FM to keep up to date not only on new episodes of this program, but all of the other amazing show hosts on JESS FM and JESS TV. We'll see you next week. Don't forget that we are on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We'll see you then. And don't forget, for anybody watching from overseas, your clocks go back this weekend. So don't forget to adjust that when you look at our starting time next week. Remember, it is 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Make sure that you also go to the comment section. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what you think is going to be the outcome for either the Edmonton Oilers, Calgary Flames, or any other team in the NHL this season. Keep the conversation going. Keep it respectful. And until next week, folks, stay safe out there. Thanks again for tuning in to Primetime Live. I'm James Cousineau for you in Lethbridge, Alberta. Thanks for joining us. One quick note as we sign off, ladies and gentlemen, if you have an Alberta business, particularly in the Lethbridge area, we would love to hear from you. We would love to feature your business in a 5-minute segment so we can share the amazing businesses within the local community. And of course, the more unique, the better. But hey, we want to really encourage people to shop local, to spend their money in the community, and of course, to help each other succeed. So reach out to us at JESS FM. If you have a business you would like to have showcased on the program, it doesn't cost you a thing. It's a part of our commitment to building Lethbridge as a stronger, more connected community. Thanks for joining us, folks.
Mm-hmm.